Hey, and welcome to Eat Out at Home, the podcast. This is the place for those with exquisite taste who are on a mission to cook better, eat healthier, dine together, and add some gourmet to their everyday. I'm your host, Chef Evelyn, and on this podcast, we talk about all things food, cooking, baking, and entertaining as I share stories from my well-seasoned career as a professional chef for over 20 years. So if that sounds tempting to your taste buds, grab a snack, sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Hey, and welcome back to Eat Out at Home, the podcast. I'm excited for today's episode because I want to introduce you to a concept that is not super revolutionary, but has been extremely helpful for me in my journey to cooking at home consistently and not eating out as much. So I'm not sure what order these episodes are going to go up in. In case you don't know, I do batch record my podcast episodes, probably 4 or 5 at a time. So I never know what order I'm going to decide on. But in another episode, I mentioned, talking about, meal planning versus an eating plan, right? And so if I haven't already posted that episode, be on the lookout for that. But I think you will find that super valuable. But one of the things I talked about in there is that one of the ways that I have been able to make meal planning really short and effective for me is that I use meal templates versus recipes. One, I really don't cook with recipes unless I'm baking, and just for technical sake, for all my chefs, if you're listening, obviously in baking, we actually don't call them recipes, we call them formulas, but I digress, okay? So when it comes to, eating at home consistently, really trying to avoid eating out all the time or eating out of necessity. Like, I'm so for eating out, celebratory, social connection. So I'm not anti-eating out, even though I have an Eat Out at Home podcast. I really like the majority of my meals to be created and consumed at home. And I talked about how meal planning doesn't really work for me and what I do instead. A meal plan is really an eating plan, and I get into how you actually create a meal plan in that other episode. But one of the things that I have found that has been super effective for me is meal templates. And I think I mentioned this briefly in a previous episode if you've been catching up on the pod. So basically, I have really kind of audited and paid attention to my eating patterns. I know that I pretty much eat 3 meals a day and a mid-afternoon snack. So one, if you're somebody who's like, I don't really do 3 meals a day, maybe you're a 2 meal a day kind of person. Maybe you're a person that's like, I like to do 4 really small meals a day. Whatever the case may be, this will work. This idea of meal templates might work for you. It may be something that you want to try regardless of what your eating pattern, your nourishing pattern is, right? So basically, I really took a look at when I was eating out, what did I have a tendency to go for? What did I like? And so let me use an example. I live dangerously close to a Starbucks. Now, what's funny about that is I am not a coffee drinker at all. Okay. I know. Shocking. And I was finding myself at that Starbucks very frequently. Okay. To the point where I would pull up and I would start my order and the barista would be like, oh, I know your voice. I know your order. Just go ahead and pull around. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what? I need to do something different. And then when it got to the point where they knew my name and they were recognizing my face, because I'm not even gonna lie, one day I went there and they were like, oh my gosh, we haven't seen you in weeks. And I was like, that just lets me know that I was here way too often. Anyway, I digress. But one of the things I did when I was thinking about, okay, how am I gonna, entice myself, if you will, to eat out at home versus force myself to eat out at home. There's a difference, right? How do I do it out of desire and not out of discipline, right? Discipline is fine, but that can get old and really unfun really quickly, at least for me. So I was like, how can I do this in a way that makes me want to eat out at home, that makes me want to cook my meals at home, that makes me want to make everything and enjoy that process? And so I started looking at, well, what was I ordering at Starbucks. Like, why was that my place of choice? I also live, dangerously close to a Chick-fil-A. I could have went and got a spicy chicken biscuit. Mind your business, okay, about why I love a spicy chicken biscuit. But I digress. And what I realized is that the reason why I was going to Starbucks is because I love tea with breakfast, right? I'm a matcha girly or I'm a chai girly, hot or iced on either, right? Depending on the season, depending on the temperature outside. And I love a breakfast sandwich. So when I was getting started, I wasn't even thinking about quote unquote eating healthier. It was like, I know if I just make my own version of that at home, just by doing that, it's going to be healthier. I don't care if I'm making the exact same sandwich and making the exact same beverage. I already know by default, making it at home, I'm going to be using, for me, organic ingredients. I'm going to be using, whole foods. I'm going to be, and here's the thing, and it's going to be less processed and significantly more interesting, right? So I said, okay, you like a version of a tea and you like a breakfast sandwich, particularly like a bagel breakfast sandwich. And so what I did was I said, okay, let's start there. Get the ingredients that you need to make your matcha or your chai, iced or hot at home, and then get the ingredients that you need to make a breakfast sandwich, right? And so for the first couple of weeks of me getting back on that journey, listen, I was knocking them breakfast sandwiches back. Do you understand me? I had my chai with my brown sugar, oat milk creamer. Like a time was had, right? And then, I was, okay, I can change the topping. So now instead of just like a bagel with, like egg and, maybe like chicken sausage, then it was like, okay, well, let's add a little avocado. Let's add a little roasted red bell pepper. Let's add a little chili crunch. Let's add a little, right? Like I gourmeted it a little bit, right? Like I kind of just upped the ante, let's get some smoked black pepper, sharp white cheddar. Like I just did all the things. And then over time, because all I wanted to do at that point was just not eat out. It wasn't about, can I make this healthier? Can I consume something different? The goal was I just wanted to do an even trade, right? I'm having a matcha and a breakfast sandwich. I'm having a matcha and a breakfast sandwich at home, right? That was it. And that let me know, okay, I like this meal template, okay? I also realized, I said, okay, the times that I was going out for lunch, what was I typically getting? I was usually getting like a Chipotle bowl or a Cava bowl or something like that. And what I realized is I like bowls. I like that kind of, there's a hodgepodge of different ingredients and, different little, flavor profiles. I like that. And so I said, okay, what kind of bowls did I typically get? Okay, there was typically some kind of grain in there. Obviously, there was typically some kind of protein and several different veggie kind of toppings, condiments, and always some sort of leafy green. So I was like, okay, great. Listen, you can either get the frozen brown rice or white rice or whatever I was, eating, or frozen quinoa or cauliflower rice at the time. And then it was like, okay, what kind of bowl do you want this week? Do you want a more Mexican-inspired bowl? Do you want an Italian-inspired bowl? Do you want a Caribbean-inspired bowl, right? But what I realize is I love a bowl for lunch. Maybe you're not a bowl person. Maybe you like a wrap. Maybe you like a sandwich. Maybe you like a salad. But if I had to put money on it, there's probably something that you gravitated towards more often than not. I'm not saying you did it every time. Sometimes it might have been a burger and fries. But even if it was, I'd rather you make it at home than to go and be in a drive-thru, right? And so I even thought about that. I was like, sometimes I am in the mood for a burger and fries. So what did I do? I bought, sweet potato fries to keep in the freezer. And I bought ground turkey, ground chicken, and ground beef, right? So that I can make, if I wanted to switch it up, but I had it on hand, right? Even down to, I don't like to consume a ton of bread, but I was like, I'd rather have some bread or some buns on hand in the freezer so that if the craving strikes me, I can just grab it, make it, and be on my way, right? So I kind of went through my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, my snacks, and asked myself, like, okay, here's the one or two ways or the two or three kind of templates or meal types that I tend to gravitate towards. And so now I just use those templates. So my breakfast, since I was using that example, has evolved, which I realized I typically like a vegetable at breakfast. I typically like a fruit at breakfast and a protein and then some kind of tea. Okay. Now, let me tell you what's great about this. Knowing that I like a fruit, a vegetable, a protein, and some kind of tea, that is now how I plan my meals. And it almost doesn't matter the format. Okay. So there's the template, but it doesn't matter the format. Let's say I have a morning where I'm working out, right? And I want a fruit, a vegetable, and a protein. Maybe not a tea, depending on the day, I may not always get a chance for the tea. But one day that could look like a breakfast sandwich that has the protein and has, cucumber, spinach, arugula, avocado. It's got all the veggies on it. And then some sliced mango, right? So I've got a fruit, a vegetable, and a protein because maybe there's egg or chicken sausage or something on that breakfast sandwich. But some days that could be a smoothie that has spinach in it and protein powder, or a smoothie, right, that has fruit, spinach, and two boiled eggs, because I'm still getting a fruit, a vegetable, and a protein, right? And so when I'm meal planning, I can now be like, okay, I need a fruit, a vegetable, and a protein for breakfast. And I can buy the ingredients that will fulfill that. And I can go into the store and see what looks good versus saying, I have to have this specific type of breakfast sandwich on Tuesday and this specific type of smoothie on Thursday. Sometimes it's scrambled eggs with a side of broccoli and berries and yogurt, right? Sometimes I've made a frittata that's got, all the veggies in it and the protein, and I'm having that with a smoothie, right? So, having those templates allows me to meal plan really quickly. It also allows me to shop really quickly. So, for example, I know that there's only going to be a couple of variations on the ways that I'm going to consume fruit for breakfast. It's either going to be fresh and whole, or it's going to be in a smoothie. So now I can go, okay, I'm going to grab, a couple of apples this week, a couple of mangoes this week, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm stocked on the kind of smoothies that I like. I like dark berry smoothies, so my smoothies are typically blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, and cherries with almond milk. And I know if I'm having a smoothie, I'm probably going to throw some protein powder in there because I do a lot of physical movement, and I'm probably going to throw some spinach in there. So I know every week that I'm going to be grabbing a container of baby spinach and then making sure that I keep my freezer stocked with those things, making sure that I have my almond milk or coconut milk or whatever you use on hand. But then I also know I'm probably going to keep some eggs on hand. I've kind of moved away from the breakfast sausages, but I keep my protein powder stocked, right? So really, you can go through your eating style and your eating preferences and create, one or two templates per meal. And then when you get ready to plan out your eating plan for the week or the 2 weeks, you can kind of take a look and say, okay, here's what it's like coloring by numbers, right? I can just plug and play and throw this in there, right? You may be in a family that likes a very kind of standard American, we want a protein, 2 veggies, and a starch for dinner. But if you know that you like that, then you can just plan for that, right? I know that I like to have for my afternoon snack, kind of like an adult Lunchable, right? Like a mini charcuterie situation, what the people are calling a girl dinner. I love a little snacky plate mid-afternoon, because that's my longest stretch. I typically eat lunch around noon, but I'm not eating dinner till about 6 o'clock, right? So usually around 3, I just need a little something, nothing major. And I typically like a fruit, a vegetable, a protein, and a sweet treat and a salty treat. So it may be like some chocolate covered, pecans maybe there's a couple in there. Maybe there's a little piece of, sharp cheddar cheese. I typically like some kind of dippy thing. So that I might have made some hummus. I might have some guacamole, right? Like I know I want a little dippy thing. I know I want something a little crunchy. I kind of know that meal template. So I keep items on hand. It could be pita chips. It could be plantain chips. It could be, carrot sticks, right? It could be cucumber slices, right? It could be nuts. It could be a myriad of things. It could be a rice cake, a corn cake. But what I know is this is the template that I like. So anyway, this episode has gotten pretty long. As you can see, I'm pretty passionate about it, but I want you to think, would having meal templates be beneficial for you when it comes to meal planning versus having to have recipes all the time? I think recipes are great. I think, cookbooks, I love cookbooks, Pinterest, I think they're a great source of inspiration. But instead of me having to go on there and be overwhelmed or like, I don't know, I can look at things and go, oh, where does this fit into my meal templates? And not that I never vary outside of that. I can talk about how when it comes to the weekend, my meal templates go out the door. I like very traditional, like meals on the weekend. I know it's a mental thing, but really take a look at and see if planning out your eating, your feeding plan, if you will, by templates may be more beneficial to you. And I think the reason why I enjoy it so much is because it reduces decision fatigue. I already know the format of the meals that I'm going to have. All I have to do is just plug and play, right? It's like, square peg, square hole. I can just stick something in that slot and I don't really have to overthink it. It also makes shopping a lot quicker and a lot easier. So with that said, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you've ever heard of planning your meals by templates or having meal templates, or if you have found this episode useful, and I will catch you in the next one. If you're enjoying this podcast, make sure to head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave it a review. And if you're curious about what I'm cooking in between episodes, make sure to stay connected with me on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, where I'm sharing delicious behind the scenes grocery hauls, recipe inspiration, food for thought, and so much more. I'll see you in the next episode.